Hey there, what's up guys? Bryan here. Today let's talk about the 5-1 resolution. The reason why we want to do that is because this type of chord progression, this type of chord movement is very prominent in various different styles. Let's just take pop for example, and let's take a common progression of 1, 6, 4, 5. In the key of C it will be C, A minor, F, G. What you'll notice is that the 4-chord progression, it loops around, and at the end of the progression it goes back into the start. C, A minor, F, G actually goes back to C. And there you go, that's the 5-1. You'll need a bit of theory knowledge to this, so if you haven't already, go and check out my theory lessons playlist. I'll link it up here. As you know, the 5 chord, G, can be a dominant chord, making it a G7, right? Because it's the 5th chord. The reason why it sounds like it's away from home and then arriving back at home of the tonic, which is C, is because it can be considered quite far away. If you compare 1 and 2 chord, those 2 chords are just a step away from each other, whereas if you have to go all the way from 5 back to 1 or go the other way around, there's a few steps that you have to go. So how are we going to explore this tension and release? We're going to look at individual notes, because individual notes in the chords have their own responsibilities, if you like. They have to go to another place when the next chord arrives. So looking at it, sort of putting a microscope on each of the notes will help us better understand why things sound the way they do. Let's take G7, open chord, and then C major open chord. Clearly you can hear the top note, which is F, resolve into the E note of the C major chord. That's one important thing to note, because the F resolving back down into the E is just a half step away, so they're quite close. And as always, we can look at them as numbers. So the F of the G7 is going to be the flat 7, and the E of the C major is going to be the 3rd, right? So note down, flat 7 will resolve into the 3rd. Let's look at another note. Let's look at the 3rd note of G, which is B, the 2nd string. B resolves into C. So you can put the 3rd note of the dominant chord resolves back into the root note of the tonic chord, the 1 chord. So there are some sort of similarities between the 2 notes that we've looked at. One being that they are part of so-called guide tones. So 3rds and 7ths are going to be guide tones because they give us the most information about the chord, compared to, let's say, a 5th, which is, in this case, kind of not that important. But if you change the 3rd or if you change the 7th of a chord, it really changes the whole chord quality. The 7th, or technically the flat 7th, goes into a 3rd, right? It resolves. And the 3rd goes into the root. The root being also an important note, of course. The other way we can look at it is through the perspective of intervals. B and F is a flat 5, so it's a tritone, 3 full tones away from each other. It sounds very dissonant, doesn't sound very pleasant, and it sounds very unstable. which is why the G7 is considered an unstable chord. It wants to go and resolve into C and E, which is an interval of a major third. That's a very nice interval. So you can simply pick out the most important notes of any chord going into the next chord. In this case, I'm going to pick the top two strings. That's essentially what you're hearing. Just a bit of extra work you can do is to find this interval somewhere else on the guitar. For example, you can play bar chords. If you look at the middle two strings, you've got F and B, and those two notes actually just, as you know, resolve into the C and the E note. If you put the bass note in, sounds nice, doesn't it? Thank you so much for watching this video. Since you made it this far, I hope you got something out of it. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and go and watch more videos. Don't forget to ring the bell as well. Cheers!